Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. I still can't believe it. My wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had just walked down the aisle, exchanged vows with the man I thought was my soulmate, and celebrated with our family and friends. Everything felt magical until it wasn't. I remember standing in the middle of the reception, watching the people I loved dance and laugh, while my husband was nowhere to be found. That's when something in my gut told me something wasn't right. I glanced around, expecting to see him chatting with a guest or maybe grabbing a drink at the bar. But he wasn't anywhere in sight. My stomach twisted. I excused myself and started searching, trying not to look like a paranoid bride. I walked outside, past the garden, and that's when I saw him. He wasn't alone. My heart pounded as I took a step closer, and what I saw made my entire body go cold. He was kissing another woman. At first, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't him. But no, it was him. My husband. Still in his tuxedo, standing under the soft glow of the string lights, holding another woman like she belonged to him. She wasn't just some random stranger. The way they touched, the way she smiled at him, it wasn't new. This had been happening for a long time, and I had been completely blind to it. I wanted to scream, to run up to them and demand an explanation. But my feet felt like they were cemented to the ground. My heart was racing, my chest tightening. I had just married this man, just said vows about love, loyalty, and forever. And here he was, sneaking around on me before our wedding night had even begun. I forced myself to take a shaky breath and backed away. I needed time to think. I needed to understand how this happened. I stumbled back inside, trying to keep my breathing steady, my face neutral. No one could know. Not yet. I wasn't ready for the whispers, the pity, the inevitable heartbreak that would come once the truth spilled out. My hands trembled as I grabbed a champagne flute, pretending to sip as I watched him reappear minutes later, adjusting his tie like nothing had happened. He walked up to me, kissed my cheek, and asked if I was having fun. I wanted to scream. I stayed quiet. I couldn't confront him, not right then. Not with everyone watching, celebrating. The lies were thick in the air, so tangible that it felt like I was suffocating. He smiled at me, his hand on my back as if everything was fine. I wanted to look away, to act like nothing was wrong, but my mind was screaming. How could he be so cold? How could he stand there, lying to me with every word? But there was no choice but to play along. Later, when the guests started to leave, I tried to confront him. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice shaky, but my tone calm. He gave me that look, an expression I'd seen before. It was the one he used when he knew I was onto something. "Just needed a break," he said smoothly. "Too much going on. Just wanted some fresh air." I tried to believe him, but the lies tasted bitter on my tongue. He was lying, and we both knew it. It wasn't until we were in the hotel room, alone, that the truth started to sink in. I watched him undress, trying not to let my emotions spill over. But when he climbed into bed beside me, his warmth felt like a betrayal. My mind kept racing. Flashes of him with her, kissing her, holding her. How long had it been going on? I had been blind to it all, too focused on the wedding, on our future. He had been sneaking around behind my back, and I hadn't known. I couldn't sleep. My mind was spinning with questions, with doubts, with a sense of betrayal so deep I didn't know how to escape it. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but something inside me told me to wait, to gather evidence, to make sure he couldn't lie his way out of this. So, I started searching. His phone, his texts, his emails. And that's when it all came crashing down. The affair wasn't just a one-time thing. It had been happening for months. The messages were right there, hidden in plain sight. Sweet words, plans for secret dates, even a few photos. My heart shattered as I scrolled through the evidence. There it was, right in front of me. Proof that my husband, the man I had trusted with everything, had been seeing another woman the entire time we were together. My wedding day was a joke to him, just another lie to cover up the truth he thought I'd never find out. I sat there for hours, staring at his phone. The weight of it all was too much. How could he do this? How could he betray me in such an intimate, cruel way? I kept thinking about everything. Our engagement, our time together, the promises he made. They meant nothing. I felt like a fool. But more than that, I felt broken. The man I thought I knew didn't exist. I was living in a world built on lies, and the truth had shattered me. The next morning, I confronted him. My voice was steady, but inside, I was trembling. I saw the messages, I said. His face paled. What are you talking about? He asked, his eyes wide, his voice shaking. I threw his phone at him, watching as it slid across the floor. I know everything. I spat. He froze, and for a moment, there was silence. Then he started to apologize. But his words felt hollow. He wasn't sorry, he was just caught. His apologies didn't make a difference. I was too far gone, too deep in the mess of his lies. How long? I demanded. How long has this been going on? He looked down, avoiding my gaze. A few months, he admitted quietly. My stomach turned. A few months? We were planning a life together while he was lying to me, sneaking around. The man I had trusted was nothing more than a stranger, and it was all too much to bear. I didn't know what to do. My wedding day was supposed to be the start of our forever, yet here I was, sitting in front of a man who didn't care about me at all. I wanted to walk away, to leave him right then and there, but something held me back. Maybe it was the history we shared. Maybe it was the fear of being alone, or maybe I was just too broken to move. But I stayed, and I hated myself for it. The next few days were a blur of confusion and anger. I couldn't stop thinking about the betrayal, about the woman who had taken my place in his heart. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers from the one person who could explain why she was willing to hurt me, but I wasn't sure I was ready for that. She was a part of this too, a part of the lie I had been living in, and I needed to know the full truth. I finally decided to confront her. I found out where she lived, and I couldn't put it off any longer. When I knocked on her door, she answered with a calm smile, as if she had no idea who I was. But when I said my name, her face faltered. She knew exactly who I was. I think we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but my insides a mess of emotion. She didn't try to deny anything. There was no guilt in her eyes, no remorse. It was as if she was waiting for me. Her words came easily, like she had rehearsed them. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. But your husband and I. She paused, looking for the right words, as if she cared. But she didn't. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't the least bit apologetic. It was clear she had no qualms about what they were doing. To her, it was just another affair, another fling. And I was nothing more than an obstacle in her way. My rage boiled over. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Did you think I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't see through the lies? She shrugged, as if she couldn't care less. I never meant to hurt you, she said, but I didn't believe her. Her words were empty. The more she talked, the more I realized she wasn't the victim here. I was. She had no shame, no sense of responsibility. To her, I was just collateral damage. I left her apartment feeling more lost than ever. Confronting her hadn't given me the answers I was looking for. It hadn't made me feel any better. It had just left me more broken, more confused. I thought that maybe confronting her would make me feel empowered, but instead, I felt like a fool. I was the one who had been betrayed. I was the one who had been fooled. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was just a part of the mess I was now drowning in. I went home, but it felt nothing like home anymore. My husband was there, waiting, as if everything was fine, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I couldn't look at him the same way. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. I need space, I told him. He didn't argue. He didn't try to fix things. He just sat there quietly. And in that silence, I realized I didn't know who he was anymore. He was a stranger to me. The silence between us grew unbearable. He was trying to act like nothing had happened, but I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. The man I married, the man I thought I knew, wasn't the person standing in front of me. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do next. Stay and try to salvage the pieces of this broken marriage, or leave and never look back. I wasn't ready to make that decision, but I knew something had to change. I spent days wandering around in a fog, trying to make sense of it all. My emotions were all over the place. Anger, sadness, disbelief. I felt like I was walking through life as a shell of myself. Every memory I had of our relationship seemed tainted now. Every kiss, every sweet word, felt like a lie. He had betrayed me in a way I couldn't even begin to understand. How could I ever trust him again? Could I even forgive him? I started going to therapy. Talking to someone who didn't know me, who didn't know him, helped me process everything. It wasn't easy. I cried more than I thought I ever could. But with each session, I began to see things more clearly. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I had every right to feel hurt and angry. My husband's actions were unforgivable, but I still wasn't sure if I was ready to give up on everything we had built. One day, he came to me and said, "I want to fix this." But the words felt empty. They sounded like a man who was only sorry because he got caught, not because he truly regretted what he had done. "Do you love her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. He didn't love me the way he should have. He had never loved me like that. I realized then that love wasn't enough. Love wasn't going to fix the betrayal, the lies, or the pain I felt. His love had always been conditional, tied to convenience and selfishness. He didn't truly understand what it meant to love someone unconditionally, to respect them and protect them. And I couldn't be the person who spent the rest of her life settling for half-hearted apologies and empty promises. I deserved more. I started to see things more clearly. I realized I had been holding on to a version of him that never existed. My husband had never been the man I thought he was. He had played a role, pretending to be the loving partner, the faithful husband. But underneath it all, he had been someone entirely different. The truth was too painful to ignore, and I knew it was time to stop pretending. I deserved someone who would love me for real. The conversation we had after I told him I couldn't stay was one of the hardest things I've ever done. He tried to justify his actions, blaming stress, work, and even me for the affair. But it didn't matter anymore. His excuses only made me angrier. He hadn't just cheated on me. He had betrayed everything we had built. The trust, the promises, the dreams for the future. And now, there was nothing left between us but lies and broken pieces. I moved out. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't heal while still living in the same space as the man who had shattered my heart. I needed distance to find myself again, to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I wondered if I had made the right choice. But in my heart, I knew I couldn't continue living a lie. I had to let go. As the weeks went by, I started to feel a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. I wasn't fully healed, but I was beginning to reclaim my life. I focused on myself, on rediscovering who I was outside of the woman who had been betrayed. I surrounded myself with friends, went back to doing things I loved, and slowly, the pain started to fade. I was no longer defined by his lies. I was free to be me again. Months later, I received a letter from him. He apologized again, begged me to come back, promised he had changed. But I knew better now. I had given him every chance to prove his love, and he had chosen someone else. I wasn't bitter anymore. I had forgiven him, not for his sake, but for mine. I had learned to let go of the past, and I was finally ready to move on. The future was mine to shape, and it was going to be so much brighter without him. Thank you for listening to my story until now. If you like the video, please support it by subscribing and liking.